What's up, everyone? If your birth year falls somewhere between 1995 and 2012, congratulations, you're officially Gen Z. According to older generations, we're supposedly lazy, perpetually glued to our screens, obsessed with starting trends, and dramatically overreacting about mental health issues. Before you feel too attacked, though, remember that previous generations have their own embarrassing moments they'd rather forget. Their track record isn't exactly flawless either. Anyway, I'm constantly scrolling through content that makes me laugh uncontrollably, and whenever my parents ask what's amusing, I face two options. Either mumble, "you wouldn't understand," or actually show them, which inevitably makes me look absolutely ridiculous. So what makes Gen Z humor so impossibly complex? Researchers have actually attempted to decode this chaotic mess we call comedy. Let me break it down. Gen Z humor gets categorized into several distinct types: ironic comedy, using jokes as emotional defense mechanisms, what we call dark humor, meme culture, complete absurdism, and the inside joke phenomenon. Here's where things get really complicated. Irony itself splits into multiple subcategories, including basic sarcasm, meta-irony, and post-irony. Sarcasm is straightforward and universally understood across generations. Post-irony represents something different entirely. It's essentially circling back to genuine sincerity after layers of sarcasm, like playing a reverse card that transforms your sarcastic statement into something authentic. Imagine your friend constantly makes outrageous sarcastic statements like, "Anyone who doesn't follow me deserves prison time." Eventually, if they start expressing genuinely extreme opinions, their statements stop being perceived as jokes and become serious declarations. You've been fooled through ironic layers when actually they were sincere all along. But nothing compares to meta-irony complexity. This occurs when multiple irony forms stack on top of each other, creating such confusion that distinguishing between sincerity and sarcasm becomes genuinely impossible. Let me illustrate. Person A delivers a cheesy dad joke. "I'm currently reading about anti-gravity physics. I literally cannot put it down." Person B responds with fake enthusiasm. "Wow, absolutely hilarious. Truly peak comedy right there." That response represents meta-irony because the sarcastic delivery masks their actual feelings. This contradictory response leaves everyone confused about who's being mocked. Is person B mocking themselves? Person A, the joke itself? Or maybe nothing at all? Multiple irony layers make determining the truth impossible. We've all been scrolling online and encountered memes addressing serious topics, yet because they contain humor, we react with amusement. That's humor functioning as a coping mechanism, commonly known as dark humor. Jokes about mental health struggles, environmental collapse, or absent parents represent how humor has always helped people manage stress. Gen Z isn't different in this regard. We joke about unfortunate circumstances constantly, primarily because we're bombarded with apocalyptic news daily. When the world seems perpetually on fire, humor becomes a means of survival. Most people understand what memes are at this point. If you don't, you might need internet education immediately. So, explaining them feels somewhat pointless. But for those genuinely confused, memes essentially function as internet language and social currency. They're an irreplaceable component of Gen Z humor that has successfully invaded every digital space, further erasing boundaries between comedy and reality. Absurdity defines what makes Gen Z humor unique. You cannot have one without the other. They're inseparable counterparts. Obviously, not every joke embraces weirdness, but randomness elevates good jokes to great ones. The more bizarre and unexpected the punchline, the funnier it becomes. We gravitate toward absurd, random content because we're drowning in thousands of predictable jokes and generic memes. The unpredictable ones become exponentially funnier by contrast, triggering dopamine releases in our brains that create happiness. The ultimate peak of Gen Z humor happens when everyone instantly understands the reference, and you immediately become the ODD one out when requesting an explanation. This has personally happened to me more times than I care to admit. I understand the struggle of keeping up with everything nowadays. It gets exponentially worse when jokes get recycled and start referencing each other, creating one massive inside joke you're completely excluded from. It's like arriving late to a party where everyone shares history you don't have. You're standing there confused while everyone else laughs at references you can't decode. Understanding Gen Z humor requires immersion in internet culture, familiarity with constantly evolving memes, and an acceptance that sincerity and irony have merged into something almost indistinguishable. We've created a comedy language that's simultaneously deeply personal and completely impersonal, using humor to process a world that often feels overwhelming and absurd. Every generation develops its own communication style that confuses their elders. We just happen to have the internet, accelerating and amplifying ours to unprecedented levels. So next time someone older doesn't understand why you're laughing at seemingly random content, remember, they had their own incomprehensible trends too. We're just continuing that tradition in digital form. Anyway, before I wrap this up, let me just say this. If you found this explanation helpful or at least mildly entertaining, show some appreciation through likes, comments, and subscriptions. Actually, you know what? Don't do any of that. Absolutely don't engage with this content whatsoever. That would be terrible. Completely avoid all interaction. See what I did there? That's meta irony in action, or was it? You'll never really know for certain, and that's exactly the point.